From Kern Government Television, welcome to this week's Kern County Board of Supervisors meeting, originating from the County Administrative Center located at 1115 Truxtun Avenue, Bakersfield, California. Kern County's vision is to create and maintain a customer-centered county government designed to garner the confidence, support, and trust of the people we serve. Today's Kern County Board of Supervisors meeting will convene momentarily.
Hi, good morning. Board to reconvene. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Thank you. Supervisor Peters?
Here.
Supervisor Scrivener?
Here.
Supervisor Maggard?
Here.
Supervisor Couch?
Here.
Supervisor Perez?
Thank you. Welcome to the Tuesday, January 25th, 2022, 9 a.m. meeting of the Kern County Board of Supervisors. We're going to start today's meeting with a salute to the flag led by Supervisor David Couch. Please remain standing for a moment of prayer, silence, or meditation, whichever you prefer.
Please stand and place your hand over your hearts. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Please be seated. Okay, we will move on now to our pet of the week. So I'll ask Nick Cullen to come out, our Director of Animal Services, and introduce our pet of the week. Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Probably here, see her. I have with me this morning Winnie. Winnie's about a 13-week-old, there we go, 13-week-old Chihuahua pup. She just came to the shelter about a week ago. She is a puppy. I say that because she had a foster family who brought her back same day and said she's too much for us. So she's got a lot of energy, and she's available for foster. She'll be available for adoption this Friday.
Well, she's an adorable pup, and we hope that we'll have a potential owner come forward for her.
Yes.
Thank you. Thanks, Nick. Appreciate it.
We could harness the energy in her tail. We could be another source of alternative energy here.
All right. Okay, so next we have our report on actions taken in closed session on Monday, January 24th, which was yesterday. So I'll ask Margaret Rayson to give us a report, our county council. Good morning.
Good morning, Chairman, members of the board. Yesterday you had a special board meeting and had a closed session item, number 1 on the agenda. You met, but there is no reportable action.
Thank you. So we'll now move on to our consent agenda. All items listed with a CA above the item number are considered to be routine and non-controversial by county staff. And if any member of the audience wishes to comment or ask questions regarding an item or items on the consent agenda, they may do so prior to a vote being taken. A member of the board may remove any item from the consent agenda, and it will be considered in listed sequence with an opportunity for any members of the public to address the board concerning the item before action is taken. And so I will read our consent items. Starting on page 2, we have items 2 through 7 are on consent. And on page 3, items 10 through 14 are on consent. On page 4, items 15 through 18 as well as 20 are all on consent. Page 5, item 21 as well as 23 through 27 are on consent. And on page 6, item 28 as well as 30 through 34 are on consent. All items on page 7, 35 through 42 are on consent. And we have on page 8, items 43 and 44. And so before I entertain a motion, I will abstain from items 31, 32, and 33 because of a potential source of income to my spouse. And so, Madam Clerk, please record my abstention from each of these items, even though I will vote on the motion to approve the consent agenda. So at this point, I will entertain a motion to approve our consent agenda. But first, I'll ask if there are any members of the public that would like to make a comment on any item on consent. Okay, seeing none, I'll then return to the board.
Motion on consent. Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Please cast your votes.
We've done this too long together, Mr. Couch.
Thank you. The motion is approved. All ayes.
Thank you. That will return us to page 2 of our agenda, and if you would like to follow along, we do have agendas that are available at the 2 tables in the back. But item number 1 is actually going to be withdrawn by the DHS department, and we'll be resubmitting this item for our next meeting. And so that will then take us to public presentations, and that's item 8. This portion of the meeting is reserved for persons to address the board on any matter not on this agenda, but under the jurisdiction of the board. Board members may respond briefly to statements made or questions posed. And I'll ask if there are any members of the public that would like to make a public presentation. You have 2 minutes to do so. Okay, I don't see any public presentations, so then we will move on to board. Oh, I'm sorry, excuse me. Thanks, Phil. Good morning.
Good morning, Emma de la Rosa, Policy Advocate with Leadership Council. Some of you received an email from me last week. This is in regards to a water disconnection that happened at the Lemont PUD. A resident who had applied for the Rental Utility Assistance Program back in September was still waiting for the assistance to come through. At this point, as you know, water districts can shut people off. They can disconnect their water. The moratorium has been lifted, and Lemont PUD wasted no time. They went ahead and they shut people off, and she was not the only one. Now, there's 2 things here that I want to highlight. The first one being that the rental utility assistance, we had a meeting, we talked about the hope that the process could be sped up, right? And hoping that it would be no more than like a month or a month and a half. This person was waiting since September. Thankfully, the situation did get cleared up. Staff responded quickly, but it took her having to get her water disconnected for her to get her payment. And that should not happen. She has little children. Her children had to go to school, dirty. They couldn't take a shower. She couldn't cook. This causes issues. So I respectfully request that you check in with the Housing Authority and see if there's any pending applications from last year, that they be prioritized and that they be completed as soon as possible. The other part is that the Lemont PUD was supposed to provide a payment plan option to this resident. The form that she received where it says that she's behind does not indicate that in Spanish. It does say, if you need help translating, call this number. She called the number. She did not get that information provided to her. She was told that she had to pay the payment in full in order for her water to be connected again. She went to the office, same thing was said to her until she gave them my number and I was able to speak to Scott. At that point, the payment plan was offered to her, thankfully. But again, she is not the only person. I spoke to another resident yesterday who has another bill that has the same information. If you want, it says that the full amount has to be paid in full. It doesn't say anything about a payment plan. As you know, the state is providing debt relief to the water districts. Lemont PUD, amongst many others in Kern County, did sign up for this program. They have to offer residents a payment plan, and they have to provide them 30 days before they're able to actually turn off their water or disconnect their water. This was not done with this resident, and Lemont PUD did apply for the funds. So I respectfully request that you please check in with the water districts in your respective districts and see which ones applied for the funding, and send them a gentle reminder to inform residents. They have to inform residents. I know Supervisor Couch, your staff usually sends reminders, updates to the community, so maybe that could be included in those reminders. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Supervisor Couch?
Yes, thank you. Emma, can I ask you a quick question about that? Is that resident on Hall Road?
No.
Can you provide the resident's name and address to Mr. Alsup?
Sure.
So there must be 2 separate incidents of that, and one, I don't think, the facts don't align with what you just said. The other one must be the one you're talking about that I'm unaware of.
Sure, yeah. Okay. I did send you an email, and I think I provided the address. I'm not sure, but yeah, I'm happy to do that. There was another resident who called who received my number from Scott and was told that in order for her to get her water turned on, she had to call me and get assistance. And while I'm happy to help, the responsibility falls on LPUD to provide that payment plan and to turn the water back on.
I understand. I just want to know the name and the address. I don't want you to tell me right now. I just want you to provide it so we can. Okay.
I just wanted to share that because that was also inappropriate. LPUD needs to take their own responsibility. Thank you.
Thank you.
Supervisor Perez?
Thank you so much, Chair. I have a question, Emma. I used to represent Lemont, and we had a lot of experiences and challenges at LPUD. Who's the leadership there now, and how is it functioning as an entity overall? COVID was a nightmare for a lot of people. This sounds really problematic, and I know Supervisor Couch will be right on it, and I appreciate you bringing it to our attention. This is very important, serious stuff. What is your take about the functioning of that body right now?
I honestly didn't really get any negative feedback from communities until right now. And so that's really pretty much all I can share is what the experience of the residents has been to this point. Scott was very willing to speak to me, and we were able to clear it up, and he was able to offer that payment plan. So that I appreciate very much. I think it's a matter that could have been prevented, and that's why I'm here, right? Because we want to make sure that we do prevent any further water disconnections. There's no reason to, especially if they've applied for the state funding.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other public speakers? Okay, seeing none, then we will now move on to board member announcements or reports. And we'll start off with the Ad Hoc Committee requesting that Bryn Kerrigan, our Director of Public Health, come forward and give us an update on our COVID response for the county. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. As of yesterday, our case rate was 178.3 per 100,000 people. At my presentation to your board 3 weeks ago, it was 15.2 per 100,000 people. As of yesterday, we had 309 hospitalizations and 53 ICU patients. 3 weeks ago, we had 131 hospitalizations and 34 in the ICU. As of yesterday, Kern County's hospital system had 129 staffable available regular hospital beds and 30 staffable available ICU beds. Kern's ICU capacity is 16.4%, and the San Joaquin Regional ICU capacity is 10.4%. 8 nurses have been acquired through staffing resource requests to assist with staffing throughout this 4th surge. We currently have 2 state staff teams in Kern County that have expanded both regular and ICU hospital bed capacity at Kern Medical and Adventist Health Bakersfield and Delano. This expansion has provided approximately 25 ICU beds and 15 med-surg beds to Kern's capacity. It is anticipated staffing will remain through February, at which time needs will be reassessed. A 3rd state-staffed expansion team is expected to arrive tomorrow at Good Samaritan Hospital to expand Kern's capacity by an additional 14 ICU beds and 18 regular hospital beds. This expansion is expected to be operational by this weekend and will be in place through March 31st, at which time needs will be reassessed. We also have 3 state staff strike teams consisting of 6 nurses and 6 paramedics on each team assigned to the emergency department in 3 hospitals to assist with offloading patients from ambulances and patient care in the emergency room. These teams are expected to be in Kern County through the end of February, at which time needs will be reassessed. Additionally, we have ambulance strike teams consisting of 11 ambulances and 22 crew members with an additional 10 paramedics currently heading to Kern to assist with ambulance response to 911 calls in Kern County. We continue to review the state's modeling for planning purposes. The modeling is currently suggesting that Kern's peak of COVID-19 patient census in the hospitals will be tomorrow with 337 COVID-19 patients. As of this week, 1,096,988 doses of the COVID-19 vaccine have been administered to Kern County residents. 456,712, or 53.4% of Kern's 5 and older population have been fully vaccinated against COVID-19. Another 60,816 people have 1 dose of their 2-dose series, meaning 60.6% of Kern's 5 and older population is at least partially vaccinated. Over 158,202 doses have been identified as either an additional dose for those who are immunocompromised or a booster dose, meaning that 35% of our fully vaccinated population is boosted. According to the California Department of Public Health, unvaccinated Californians are 4.1 times more likely to get COVID-19, 6 times more likely to be hospitalized with COVID-19, and 17.8 times more likely to die from COVID-19 than fully vaccinated Californians. I'm trying things a little different this time and brought some charts to go along with the data that I normally present. So, Mr. Chairman, with your indulgence, I'd like to ask Madam Clerk to display the charts. Okay, copy. Since January 21st, 2021, Kern County has had 111,675 cases of COVID-19. 91,957 cases were amongst those who are unvaccinated, and 19,718 cases were amongst those who are fully vaccinated. 82.34% of our cases since January 21st have been in those who are unvaccinated, and 17.66% of our cases have been in those who are vaccinated. During this same time period, we've had 3,439 COVID hospitalizations. 3,131 hospitalizations were in those who are unvaccinated, and 308 were in those who are vaccinated. 91.04% of our hospitalizations have been in those who are unvaccinated, and 8.96% of our hospitalizations were in those who are vaccinated. We've had 789 COVID-related deaths from illnesses that started January 21st, 2021 or later. 738 were in those who are unvaccinated, and 51 were in those who are fully vaccinated. 93.28% of our deaths were in those who were unvaccinated, while 6.72% of our deaths have been in those who are vaccinated. A couple of questions were raised during my last board presentation regarding deaths. Kern County's COVID-related death, first COVID-related death occurred on March 27th, 2020. 1,188 deaths occurred in Kern County residents from infections that began prior to January 21st, 2021, which was the first day anyone in Kern could have been considered fully vaccinated. As I mentioned earlier, 789 COVID-related deaths have occurred in Kern residents, with infections occurring after residents could have been considered fully vaccinated. Therefore, 60.1% of our COVID-related deaths occurred prior to the availability of the vaccine. 5,265 Kern County residents have had 2 or more COVID-19 infections. This equates to 2.7% of our residents who have had COVID that have been reinfected, as compared to 4.3% of our vaccinated population who have had a post-vaccination infection. There have been 273 individuals who have been reinfected with COVID-19 who were hospitalized during 1 or more of their COVID-19 illnesses. 180 were only hospitalized during their first infection, 67 were only hospitalized during their second infection, and 26 were hospitalized during both infections. Those who were hospitalized following development of some level of natural immunity totals 93, or 0.05%, of Kern County's population who has had COVID-19. For comparison, 0.068% of the vaccinated population has been hospitalized. There have been less than 11 COVID-19 related deaths in individuals who have been reinfected with COVID-19. This equates to less than 0.006% of the population who has had COVID-19. For comparison, 0.011% of our vaccinated population have died with COVID-19 being a contributing cause of death. Lastly, during my last presentation, Mr. Chairman, you asked me to bring back information related to determining the severity of symptoms to try to predict the impact of the Omicron variant surge on hospitals. We compared average length of stay, median length of stay, and percentage of cases that resulted in hospitalization. Preliminarily, this review does show that the severity of the symptoms appears much lower with this fourth surge than what we saw in previous surges, as so far only 0.17% of our fourth surge cases have been hospitalized, and the average length of stay is substantially lower than all 3 of the previous surges, and specifically a third of the duration that we saw in the third surge. However, it's important to note that hospitalization data is often not provided until the patient is discharged, meaning that the data for this fourth surge likely doesn't include patients with lengthier hospitalizations as they haven't been discharged yet. There is also a known lag between increases in cases resulting in an increase in hospitalizations, which is typically about a week or 2. We are also early in the fourth surge, comparing incomplete data with complete data sets for the previous surges. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, that concludes my update.
Well, Ms. Kerrigan, first of all, thank you for putting together these hospital stats. And although, as you pointed out, it's incomplete, we still need to continue to track it. But the trend line is encouraging. And so that's definitely what I was curious about. I'll ask Supervisor Maggard if you would have any questions or comments, and then we'll go to the rest of the board. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate your allowing me an opportunity to ask questions. Good morning, Ms. Kerrigan.
Good morning.
Can you tell us a little bit about the EvuShield vaccination that's available for people who are immunosuppressed, and I don't know who else? Can you tell us about that? I want to make sure the public is as aware as they can be about it.
Absolutely. So that is the only FDA emergency use authorized pre-exposure prophylaxis, which is a treatment that you would take before you're exposed to COVID-19 if you have some underlying health conditions that lead you to be immunocompromised. So that is currently available here in Kern County. The only current provider is Kern Medical. We would ask that if you think you have underlying health conditions that leave you immunocompromised or that would lead you to not mount sufficient immunity from the vaccine, that you would contact your healthcare provider and have your healthcare provider refer you over to Kern Medical so that you can receive that treatment.
Thank you. You are very precise in how you said that. So please say once again, who is it that should contact their doctor so their doctor can refer them to Kern Medical to get the shot?
If you are immunocompromised, like if you have had an organ transplant or you're on chemotherapy or any type of medication that may make it so that you don't develop a great immunity or immune response when you do take the vaccine, if you are not a great candidate for the vaccine because your healthcare provider determines that you may not mount adequate immunity from the vaccine, then you should contact your healthcare provider and have your healthcare provider refer you to Kern Medical to receive this treatment.
Thank you. Many people are kind of under the radar taking immunosuppressants because they have autoimmune diseases. And I want to make sure they know that their doctor needs to send them to Kern Medical to get that. Thank you. Is it just one shot?
I'm not positive on that.
Okay. Thank you. Next has to do with COVID home tests. You know, this flurry of activity happened last week where the president said that we could ask for home tests to be delivered to our homes. Can you give us any update about how that works, when those will be delivered, and what the status of that is?
Absolutely. So the federal government did make an announcement that home tests would be available up to 4 test kits per household. You would submit a request for these test kits on the United States Postal website for these test kits. The last that I saw, these test kits were anticipated to start to be shipped either this week or next week. And so we are encouraging all residents to go online and apply for these test kits so that you have them readily available within your home.
Very good, thank you. Last question, N95 masks. Where can people go to get those masks? I understand that some drugstores are beginning to receive deliveries now, but there's a bit of a growing awareness that they need to have these N95 masks. So where can they get those, please?
So absolutely. So we are partnering with some of our local community-based organizations to help distribute some N95 masks. So if you have contact with a community-based organization, we would encourage you to reach out there.
What would be a community-based organization?
A community-based organization would be the Latino Task Force. It would be the Dolores Huerta Foundation. There's a number of different organizations that really try to communicate and provide resources to the community. So if you're in touch with any really group that's in your local neighborhood that's providing you information, ask them about accessing N95 masks. We are trying to get them into the community through those community-based organizations. Check with your local stores to see if they're available, check online, and then we did hear an announcement from the federal government that they are gonna make N95 masks available to the community shortly, and as soon as we have more information on that, then we'll share that as well.
Very good. Thank you very much, Ms. Kerrigan. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Supervisor. Any questions from other members of the board for Ms. Kerrigan? Thank you. Great presentation.
Thank you.
The visual is so helpful.
Yeah, I think we all appreciated the chart. Thank you.
Okay.
All right, so next item on our agenda is item 19. This is an item under the County Administrative Office. And so, Mr. Alsop, I'll turn to you unless I'm going to Mr. Zervis. I see him over here as well.
Yes, sir. Feel free to go to Mr. Zervis.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, Jim.
Good morning, Chairman and members of the board. This item before you today is for the purpose of providing an update to your board and the public regarding the county's allocation plan for the county share of the Coronavirus Local Fiscal Recovery Fund provided by the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021, and to recommend some modifications to that plan, primarily to help with our labor markets through investments in job training, economic development, and to address some disproportional impacts of COVID-19 in qualified census tracts through investments in parks and public outdoor spaces. I do have a presentation that we are in the process of bringing up.
Mr. Chairman, I'd ask for indulgence. We're having some technical difficulty, but the PowerPoint is up on the screen, and Mr. Zervis will have to ask me to advance the slides for him.
That works for me.
Thank you. So first slide, please, or next slide. So the American Rescue Plan Act implemented the Coronavirus State and Local Fiscal Recovery Fund, which is $350 billion out of the $1.9 trillion total expenditures through ARPA. Included in the $350 billion is the bolded line there for counties. They received $65.1 billion, and Kern County's share of that is just over $174,853,000. So, I'm sorry, $174,853,000. And it's important to note that included in ARPA, unlike prior stimulus packages, every type of local city and county and state government received individual allocations of this funding. So unlike the CARES Act where you had to be a certain size to receive funding, in this case, all cities, counties, and states received funds. Next slide, please. The allowable uses for this funds, the statute actually has 4 categories. They're listed here as 6 different categories, and that includes support for a public health response, addressing negative economic impacts related to COVID-19, replacing public sector lost revenue, premium pay for essential workers, water and sewer infrastructure, as well as broadband infrastructure. And so all of these categories were addressed in the initial allocation plan that your board approved back in June of 2021. Next slide, please. Just an overview of the timeline and where we are today. ARPA was enacted March 11th, 2021. We actually received the first allocation of that May 10th of 2021. That was 50% of the $174 million. At that time, Treasury also issued an interim final rule. And this expanded on the definitions in what was allowed and not allowed to be used with these funds. So the actual statute itself is very short, but the guidance and the work that the Treasury Department done has been very lengthy and detailed in nature. So after that, June 8th, your board approved that initial allocation plan for the fiscal recovery funds that the county received. And then fast forward about 7 months, and in January, on January 6th actually, Treasury issued a final rule. So they took all of their work that had been done over the past 7 months and issued that final rule, providing final guidance as to what's allowed and not allowed for the use of these funds. We're looking forward to May 10th, when the county will receive the second half of the county's allocation of funds. And we're here today on the 25th, really to provide or to provide some guidance based on the Treasury Department's work and recommended changes to our plans based on what we've learned over the past 7 months from the Treasury Department. These funds must be obligated by December 31st, 2024 and fully expended by December 31st, 2026. So that's the implementation period that we'll be working off of. Next slide, please. So during these past 7 months, there's been a lot that's gone on from the Treasury Department. The Treasury received over 1,500 public comments asking for clarification with regard to the interim final rule. So what does this mean? How can we spend this? Is this an allowable project? Those types of things, as well as recommendations from local governments and advocacy groups. And that all came into play during that 7-month period. In response, between May and January, the Treasury provided 8 different updates to its FAQ documents, several different summaries and guidance documents expounded with these funds. And they issued extensive information on reporting and compliance guidelines. So as you can imagine, there's a lot of tracking and reporting that we have to do and all governments have to do with respect to these funds. And taking all of that into account and seeing how the landscape has shifted over the past 7 months based on the direction from Treasury, we knew back in June that we would be coming back to your board with updates based on that new information from Treasury as that became available. And that's where we are today. So, and what we're recommending today takes all of this guidance into account as well as the final rule itself. And I will just make a comment so that just to give you an idea here, the actual statute is about 5 sentences. The final rule is over 430 pages. So that's the type of detail that we've gotten from Treasury in this regard.
Typical like the Internal Revenue Code.
Next slide, please. So what's changed under the final rule? There's really a few main categories that shifted between the interim final rule and the final rule. What we've got is number one, the Treasury is allowed for a simplified $10 million lost revenue calculation as opposed to a more detailed analysis of your actual lost revenue. That doesn't really apply to us. It really benefits smaller governments that would be in that $10 million category. We're significantly higher than that. Second, it streamlined options for providing premium pay for essential workers, meaning just less documentation and justification required. We've already provided premium pay to essential workers, so that's not really going to change the course of action for the county. Item number 3, it has specifically expanded our ability to rehire beyond pre-pandemic levels. So up until this point, the rule had been you can hire up to staffing levels. The government can rehire up to staffing levels to where you were before the pandemic. Here, there's some acknowledgement that may not be enough, and you can actually go beyond that. Number 4, the definitions for water, sewer, and broadband projects had been expanded. That was based on a lot of the comments that had come in from public agencies. And 5 is probably the broadest change here and most impactful to us. Treasury's expanded on the non-exhaustive list of allowable projects to respond to health and economic impacts of COVID-19. It includes capital projects, which had been excluded under some previous guidance, and benefiting communities impacted by the pandemic with a presumptive allowance when working in a qualified census tract or other disproportionately impacted communities. So which this means, what we're saying is if you're working in a qualified census tract, there's certain types of projects you can do that are presumed to be responsive to COVID-19, and that population is presumed to be disproportionately impacted. So there's less additional justification needed when doing these types of projects. They're simply allowed presumptively. Next slide, please. So the proposed amendment, what's before you today for consideration, and this is detailed in your staff report, along with an update on what we've actually spent to date. But the proposed amendment does a few things. We're going to recognize $2.2 million of interest income just on the idle funds that we've had in the Treasury over this time, and then repurpose that for this plan. Number 2, we're recommending that your board set aside $5 million for improvements in parks in qualified census tracts. So this comes back to that presumptive allowance and the type of projects you can do and where. And it specifically allows for investments in parks and public spaces in qualified census tracts. So we're recommending your board allocate $5 million for that, and that would be split out at $1 million per supervisorial district. We would be engaging with your staff as well as the public on what projects actually come out of that. Item number 3, investing $695,000 in a variety of economic and workforce development programs. number 4, we're adding our program level allocations for the homeless, substance abuse, and mental health initiatives. These came before your board in October as part of a multi-departmental strategic plan to deal with homelessness. This was some of those components. Here, your initial plan simply had $15 million allocated. Now we're actually allocating it down to those individual projects, and I'll show you what that looks like. And then we have a few just cleanups and adjustments to balance the plan out. Next slide, please. So as far as the actual changes to the plan are concerned, these are the categories that we're recommending changes in. Reduction, we're reducing the lost revenue category by about $850,000, and that simply is needed to balance the rest of the changes in the plan. Our premium pay, we know what we've actually spent on premium pay. So our original allocation in that category was $25 million, and we're reducing that to $22 million based on what was actually spent. The third item, you can see this is our $5 million new project for parks and qualified census tracts. We have a $20,000 increase for some improvements we're doing at the ETR and Bakersfield Adult School Job Training Facility. And then $550,000. Your board has already approved funding for these transitional jobs programs a couple months ago. These were programs that had been proposed through ETR, but due to funding limitations, they didn't get awarded. So we awarded them through use of the ARPA funding, or your board did rather. We're setting aside $125,000 for implementation of the B3K economic recovery strategies. And then the water system improvements out at Buena Vista, these projects came to light after the initial plan was produced and were going to be included in the county's general fund budget. And so we ended up shifting that around, and because they did qualify for this funding source, shifted them into this category. So that change is just being updated to reflect the change that really had already been made. So the net impact of all of the proposed changes is $2.2 million. And again, that's getting funded with our interest income on those idle funds. Next slide, please. Here is the project level allocations for our $15 million for homelessness. We lost it. Okay. So I can refer you to your board packet, and only have
Mr. Zervis, do you want us to take a pause here to try to get the video working? We're happy to do that. I know we've got
I only have about 2 more slides.
Okay, wait a minute. We've got to.
Wait. Okay.
Do we have a plan B?
We're gonna.
Can you do the document camera?
We are.
Andy?
Hold
Okay.
on just one moment.
All right.
Oh, wait a minute. The document camera also requires the screen.
So
You have to vote for it to know what's in it,
Jim,
right?
so that I can let
Jim,
me.
why don't you proceed and,
let me just-
and get just kind of
We're
cover the
almost
slides.
there. Thank you. Let me just finish up. So I can refer you to the last page in your board packet on this letter, and it actually has a detailed summary of these plans. Of the plan and all of the individual items. So really what's on that slide that's flashing is the allocation of the $15 million that was set aside for the homelessness related items, the individual line items, including the co-response teams with behavioral health, the MET team expansion, the safe camping and parking with supported services item, and a non-congregate navigation center with wraparound services. So, and these are all the items that came to your board back in October and were approved by your board as part of that strategic plan on homelessness. And then the balance of the plan really has not changed, so everything else remains the same, and that's that document that just flashed on your screen is included in your board letter, and it actually shows the original allocations, what's been obligated to date in each one of these categories, what our recommended change is, and then what the amended plan looks like if your board moves forward with the amendments proposed here today. So why don't I stop there, and I'm happy to answer any questions that your board has.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Zervis. And to the public, we apologize for the trouble we were having as far as the video was concerned, but I think that you walked through it pretty well regardless. So at this point, I'll go to the public and see if there are any questions or comments on this, and then I'll return to the board. Do we have any members of the public that would like to make comment on this item? Okay, seeing none, I'll return to the board. And for any questions or comments, I don't see anybody punched in here. We have a staff recommendation to authorize the auditor controller to process specified budgetary adjustments in accounting transactions.
I'll just say thank you for your work and move approval of your recommendation. Thank you.
Supervisor Perez?
Thank you, Zach. I'll second that and just echo Supervisor Couch's remarks about the job that you have done. And I've heard about you, Jim, all over the state, and our team, of course, lots of people involved in what you do. I get that, but you really are such a great face for Kern County and a great voice, and it just exactly what we need. You know, timing is perfect, and you're very much appreciated, and you know, your work is noted, not just in Kern, but most importantly in Kern. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's a second, I think.
Okay, so we do have a motion and a second. I don't see any requests for further comments, so please cast your votes.
The motion is approved. All ayes.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Mr. Zervis, thank you so much. All right. So our next item will be item 22. This is under Employers Training Resource. And I believe we have Teresa Hitchcock here to introduce this item and start the discussion. Good morning.
Good morning. So, as your board is aware, many of our smallest businesses are still struggling to recover from the impacts of the restrictions that were required during the height of the COVID-19 pandemic. So in order to provide assistance to those small businesses, in October of 2021, your board approved Employers Training Resource's request to apply for funding from the California Office of the Small Business Advocate, Cal-OSBA, to provide relief to businesses having 0 to 4 employees who face systematic barriers to accessing capital. Priorities for this funding include businesses owned by women, minorities, veterans, individuals without documentation, individuals with limited English proficiency, and business owners located in low wealth and rural communities. On January 17th, 2022, ETR received notification that our Cal-OSBA proposal was selected for funding in the amount of $1,152,000 and $1,152,388. So this is a request for your board to retroactively approve acceptance of those funds in order to provide services to some of those really hard-hit businesses throughout the community. At this time, I'd like to thank my very talented administrative team who actually put this together, and I have a number of folks here because this is a collaborative effort throughout the county. So I'd like to acknowledge our partners on this project, the Kern Economic Development Foundation, CSUB's Small Business Development Center, the Women's Business Center, and the Community Action Partnership of Kern. Jeremy Tobias was unfortunately not able to be here today. But all of the rest of the organizations are here, and they're going to use their established networks, including chambers of commerce and other nonprofit organizations throughout the county, to ensure that we assist micro businesses in all of our rural communities. So this is really an opportunity to help some of those very small micro businesses that are still struggling to reopen their doors and make sure that we're getting those businesses back up and healthy again. Therefore, it's recommended that your board accept the grant, approve appropriation of unanticipated revenue in the amount of $1,152,388 to Budget Unit 8907, and authorize the Assistant County Administrative Officer to execute the sub-grant agreement and authorize the Auditor Controller to process the specified budgetary adjustments and accounting transactions. And I'm available for any questions you might have about this funding. We're really excited. Again, this is for those really super small businesses who may not have been able to access the PPP funding that was available before because some of the restrictions were very difficult. This is a very expedited process that will be going through the Kern Economic Development Foundation.
Thank you, Ms. Hitchcock. I think that, this is another indicator how I think our staff is being very diligent about looking for those businesses that may not have qualified for the first round, second round, et cetera, and trying to find an avenue for them to get assistance. And so that's terrific. I'll ask if there are any members of the public that would like to make comments on this. Ms. Hitchcock mentioned several of the partner agencies. I know some of them are in the audience, and so we'd welcome you to make any comments or any members of the public. Otherwise, we'll return to the board. Okay, please come forward. Good morning.
Good morning, Supervisor, Board of Supervisors. I'm so excited to be here. My name is Norma Dunn. I am the director of the Kern Women's Business Center. We launched our satellite center here in March of 2019, and we became a full-fledged designated SBA Women's Business Center January 1, 2021. So we're super excited to be here. We were 2020 Women's Business Center of the Year for the district, our SBA district Fresno office, and we are excited to work with the county to provide services, and our focus is on women, minority, low income, and veterans. And I just want to share a story. You talked about maybe they didn't qualify for PPP or EIDL. I just want to say they didn't know about it, okay? So one of the things that we did with the California Relief Grant, just to share an experience, is we went door to door, business to business in Delano. We did Arvin and Lamont, and just to really tell people. And with the Latino community, they have to trust you in order to understand what you're doing and be part of the organization or learn about the process. Even though this funding was free of charge, they didn't know about it or didn't apply. This particular grant is going to allow these people who missed the boat when it came to California Relief Grant to get funding that can help their small businesses. This even includes barbers, hairdressers, nail techs, massage therapists, anyone who may have been a 1099 employee or sole proprietor. So again, I just want to say that we're excited to provide these services, and this is our target market. We're ready to go, and we have been preparing for the last month to hit the ground running, and we'd love to assist as many businesses as possible, and I just want to thank you so much for your time. Any questions?
Do we have any questions from the board?
Appreciate your enthusiasm.
I love what I do.
It shows.
That's good. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it. Any other comments from members of the public? Please come forward. We recognize the familiar face when the mask is removed. How you doing?
Thank you. Actually, I'm just speaking so I can take the mask off. Well, good morning, Chairman Scribner and members of the board. I'm Kelly Bearden. I'm the director of the CSU Bakersfield Small Business Development Center, and I enthusiastically support the motion before you. What we have learned over the last 98 weeks of this pandemic is that many of our smallest and neediest businesses were left behind. And this really offers an opportunity. It offers an opportunity to try to seek those out. And $2,500, a lot of us that are running and working with a lot of business owners, isn't a lot of money. But it really will help a lot of them on a cash flow perspective on working with the daily bills that come up, but also it gives them the opportunity to leverage to take that $2,500 and secure more funding. There's more programs that are out, $5,000, $10,000, and it really can be a vehicle to grow. So the opportunity is going to be there to do much more than just put $2,500 into an individual business owner. So we're very pleased about this, and I do have to mention also that we are actually getting a grant through the state of California called the California Dreamers Program. And that is going to be grants of $5,000 to $10,000 for new businesses. And it serves pretty much the same individuals that were mentioned in this grant, but it gives us the opportunity now to look for those that were in business in 2019 and support them with this program, but then also to work with those individuals that are going to be wanting to start businesses in this same area. Lastly, I just have to, since I haven't been here in an extended period of time, I really want to congratulate the CAO's office and the board for the Kern Recovers program. The Kern Recovers program was one of 18 or 20 pandemic relief programs that we worked with on a daily basis. And when it all came said and done, the program was timely. It was so much better than the original PPP loan that came out. and it helped a lot of businesses, and a lot of those were the small and needy. The transparency of the program was nothing that we saw on my colleagues had in local programs on the Central Coast, all through the San Joaquin Valley, the Sierras, and Eastern Sierra, which we also cover. It was an outstanding program. That's even before we get to the PPP aspect of it. So I just wanted to congratulate you on a great program that rolled out and really made a difference that we saw in a lot of lives. Thank you.
Mr. Bearden, thank you. We really appreciate those accolades, and the board definitely echoes those accolades for our staff, Mr. Zervis, Mr. Alsop. Thank you so much. Good morning, Richard.
Hi, it's Chairman Scrivener, fellow board members. My name is Richard Chapman. I'm the president and CEO of Kern Economic Development Corporation, but also the executive director of KEDF, Kern Economic Development Foundation. And we're excited about the opportunity to partner Kern Economic Development Foundation, you may know, for the Symposium, which is April 1. Hope you can be there at CTEC, as well as upcoming internship, employer internship program. But during COVID, KEDF has really hit the ground running. We partner with Chevron in terms of providing gas cards to small retailers, as well as Cap K and SoCal Gas, feeding senior citizens around the county. And so very excited about this program. Talk about COVID relief, micro businesses and entrepreneurs. Why is this money important? Well, 90% of net new job growth in any economy are from young firms, small businesses, less than a year old. So this will be a critical kind of infusion, cash infusion, to make sure that these companies are able to move forward in 2022 and be successful and bring jobs and wages into the economy, as well as tax revenues. And I did bring a flyer, the elevator speech about the program, so I'll provide that to Kathy. So. Thank you for your time, and we appreciate the partnership.
Thank you. Okay, do we have any other speakers? Okay, seeing none, I'll return to the board. Supervisor Maggard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've been involved in government for a long time, and government tends to veer towards what's safe, what's conservative, what is bureaucratic. That is not what happened with Kern County when COVID struck our community. I am just so proud of the way that Mr. Bearden referenced the Kern Recovers Program, for example. There was no hesitation, and it continues to be that way. We're going to see with the next item how we deal with skilled nursing facilities, and I'll say something about that then too. But we share ideas and brainstorms about things that we think might be helpful. Staff immediately executes them. There was not a moment of hesitation about proceeding to make sure that we had every chance possible for the employers in our community to be able to survive. And this is another example of that. So I can't thank you guys enough for not behaving and acting like normal government does. You've done this the way that it needed to be done, and I just am very, very proud of you. So thank you all.
Thank you, Supervisor. Mr. Alsop, you remind the public and the board of the total amount that we allocated for this assistance to local small businesses. I've got the number 30 million in my head. Is that right? 35?
So I think it's about 35 million in total. And thank you for the opportunity, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank the Small Business Development Center. I think that they were part of the reason, our partnership with them is part of the reason why we were so successful in getting this out. I want to thank the local banks that we brought on board and that were willing to come on to help us get this done. And in particular, on my staff, I want to thank Mr. Zerfus, and there are other staff members in our office that put a very, very strong shoulder into this to turn this around and get that money out very, very quickly when it mattered most. And so it's really a credit to their work, which is the reason why it was so fantastic and so valuable for most of those businesses who received. And I believe about 1,000 businesses countywide that received that funding support all over the county. So quite pleased with it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, do we have any other comments from the board? Otherwise, I'd entertain a motion.
Motion.
Second.
Okay, motion and a second on staff's recommendation. Please cast your votes.
The motion is approved. All ayes.
Thank you. Okay, that takes us now to item 29. This is under Public Health Services. And I know we are going to start with Bryn Kerrigan, our Director of Public Health. And I think we may be hearing from Ms. Armstrong as well. So item 29, page 6 on the agenda.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. If you will recall, on September 1st, 2020, the department presented our concerns with the operation of skilled nursing facilities, or Sniffs, in Kern County during the pandemic. During that discussion, your board requested that staff investigate the possibility of issuing a local permit to skilled nursing facilities, performing on-site audits on a frequency determined by their risk, publicly posting their CMS 5-star rating, and looking for ways to provide long-term support to the Ombudsman Program. I have with me here today Jared Lovett, who is with Aspire Healthcare Consulting, LLC, who was contracted to be Kern's SNF liaison during this pandemic, and Georgiana Armstrong, who was appointed by your board as Kern's SNF Accountability Officer. Mr. Chairman, with your indulgence, I would like to ask Mr. Lovett to discuss the county's efforts to date in Sniffs to safeguard our most vulnerable residents during this pandemic.
Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board. It is my pleasure to report that compared to the first wave of COVID-19 in Kern County skilled nursing facilities, skilled nursing residents and staff were safer and more protected in all subsequent waves. Compared to the first wave, the percentage of hospitalized nursing home residents dropped dramatically in relation to the general population. Nursing home deaths decreased over time through the course of the pandemic, and that was not the case in the general population. Reason for the improved outcomes are multifaceted, but include increased availability of personal protective equipment, or PPE, improved training and PPE utilization and infection control standards, improved staffing levels, increased availability of testing resources, a vaccination effort that was very effective, and oversight and accountability from state and county government. PPE availability, training, and utilization. In the first wave, PPE was unavailable in many instances. Where PPE was in use, there was a lack of training for proper donning and doffing techniques, and there was circumstantial utilization. In the second wave and subsequent waves, PPE was available in every facility in quantities to allow proper utilization. Training had been occurring for months, and staff were better prepared to appropriately utilize the PPE. In January 2021, Kern County Public Health put on a training in conjunction with the Occupational Health Division of California Department of Public Health for 18 skilled nursing facilities, all the facilities here in Kern County. Training was a very successful N95 fit test, train the trainer scenario. Kern County Public Health provided numerous similar and related infection control training specific to the facilities in need. Staffing. In the first wave, staffing was critically low in some instances. In multiple instances, staffing fell well below state mandated levels. In the most critical circumstances, the county deployed strike teams to assist that minimum care was provided. During the second wave, where some facilities did fall below mandated levels, there was nowhere near the quantity or lack of staffing as in the first wave. Testing. Testing was virtually non-existent in the first wave, and it occurred weekly at a minimum, and daily rapid tests were available where needed in subsequent waves. Public Health deployed a team of nurses to these facilities to assist with testing until rapid testing supplies were more readily available. Vaccination. In January of 2021, a coordinated effort between federal, state, and local governments issued an initiative to vaccinate all skilled nursing facility residents. The county subsequently stepped in 10 facilities and repeated multiple vaccination clinics in these facilities to ensure that well over 70% vaccination rate occurred in skilled nursing facility residents within 90 days of that initiative. The county support. During the first wave, the county responded after reasonably determining that a need existed. The county responded as quickly and as effectively as they could with the existent resources, primarily administrative personnel, emergency medical services personnel, and nursing staffing. These persons responded where possible, shed light on infection control issues, and helped a great deal. During the second wave, the county dispatched a skilled nursing facility expert. Trained in administration and infection control, I personally responded on site to each outbreak, usually within 24 hours of a positive resident. I provided specific guidance and direction where infection control gaps occurred, and I visited facilities almost daily, triaging needs, working with facility leadership teams and infection preventionists, providing formal and just-in-time training, guidance, leadership coaching, and direction. The State California Department of Public Health and the Hospital Associated Infection Division also supported in subsequent waves. We engaged the state in weekly meetings to discuss concerns in Kern County. The state was also more prepared to respond to subsequent waves and had infection preventionists available for consultation and guidance. All these efforts ultimately led to fewer hospitalizations in subsequent waves and decreasing deaths among nursing home staff and residents compared to the general population. These two facts alone show the guidance and direction of this board and the leadership of Bryn Kerrigan, Director of Public Health, and her predecessor, Matt Constantine, saved lives and protected nursing home residents and staff from the horrible effects of this illness. Your board is to be commended on the prompt and passionate direction given to jump into an arena, the likes of which it had not previously been associated. The leadership team at the County Department of Public Health is to be commended on taking that guidance and rapidly and efficiently redirecting and deploying administrative nursing and EMS personnel to assist with PPE, staffing, infection control, and oversight where the need existed. Ultimately, the insight and progressively creative thinking of this board and the Kern County public health officials resulted in aggressive action that protected a very vulnerable population. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for that presentation. And I don't think that you overstated anything as far as the board's attention to this. Supervisor Magrin, I know that this was a big issue on your mind, and I think that your leadership has definitely reaped benefits and ultimately saved lives. I'll ask if there are any members of the public who would like to make comment on this before I return to the board.
Mr. Chairman?
Absolutely. Ms. Kerrigan?
If I may. We have a few more pieces to this presentation, if you don't mind.
Absolutely not. Thank you. Please proceed.
We have put together some data to show the true impact these interventions have had within these facilities during this pandemic. What you will see is that all data shows that Sniffs were significantly impacted early in the pandemic when the disease was not as prevalent in our community. But through these interventions, as the disease prevalence in the community has risen, we have been able to reduce the burden of this disease in our Sniffs. Madam Clerk, it looks like you have that first slide up. This first chart shows COVID-related hospitalizations differentiated between SNF residents and non-SNF residents. As you can see, SNF patients made up over 20% of hospitalized patients at one point early in the pandemic. However, after our interventions, they never made it up to more than 15% and were usually around 5%. During the second surge, when cases rose and we would have expected to see the proportion of hospitalizations in SNF residents increase dramatically, the proportion remained low, only increasing slightly. Next chart, please. This second chart shows total cases with the light blue line representing cases in the general population and the dark blue line representing cases in the skilled nursing facilities. Early in the pandemic, Sniffs were hit hard with cases rising at a much higher rate than the rest of the community. During the second surge, we saw an increase similar to that of the general population, but with a quicker return to pre-surge levels. During the third surge, Sniffs did see a slight rise in cases, but never reached anywhere near the levels of the first surge, while community rates were nearly as high as the first surge. Next chart. This third chart compares deaths in Sniffs to deaths in the general population. Overall, we see that in both Sniffs and the general population, when we see a spike in cases, we see an increase in deaths. During the first surge, Sniffs were hit particularly hard with a high sustained number of monthly deaths for longer than the general population. After the first surge, deaths have not been seen at such high sustained levels, though they did rise with each surge. When comparing the trend of the number of monthly deaths throughout the pandemic, SNF deaths have been decreasing while deaths in the general population have been increasing. Next chart. No, it should be like some bar charts. Perfect. This fourth and final chart compares average weekly COVID cases amongst SNF residents, SNF staff, and the general population before our SNF liaison interventions compared to after our SNF liaison interventions. This chart shows that we saw a decrease in the average number of weekly cases in skilled nursing facilities amongst both residents and staff, while the prevalence of disease transmission was high in the community. During our September 1st, 2020 presentation, your board voiced interest in implementation of a local risk-based permit of these skilled nursing facilities. Unfortunately, Council has reviewed the legal ability to do so and has determined that because there is a comprehensive scheme for licensing and regulation of these facilities in Health and Safety Code 1250, we are preempted from implementation of local regulation and therefore unable to implement a local permitting program. However, we have found funding to implement a long-term liaison program in Kern. The department has been awarded a grant from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention to fund healthcare-associated infection prevention programs. So we will continue to have a SNF liaison on staff to be in regular contact with these facilities to perform regular on-site reviews of these facilities and their infection prevention efforts, and to serve as a resource for these facilities through infection prevention training and a local point of contact for them moving forward. Additionally, during our September 1st, 2020 presentation, your board expressed interest in highlighting the CMS 5-star rating of SNFs. The Ombudsman currently has a link on their website that sends interested parties to CDPH's website. CDPH has a website that has a history of citations for each facility as well as the CMS 5-star rating all in one. The department is working with the Ombudsman to develop a local campaign to educate our community on the importance of using this website as a resource when shopping for a SNF for a loved one. Mr. Chairman and members of the board, that concludes the department's presentation. However, with your indulgence, I would like to ask Ms. Armstrong to provide her report to your board, closing out her skilled nursing facility accountability officer assignment, and to discuss the importance of the Ombudsman program.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you. I would like to also emphasize and reiterate that your board's leadership in allowing county departments to step into what had normally and previously been state lanes has made a huge difference. And I applaud the Public Health Department staff and Mr. Levitt for what they've done, because it is significant and it is unique to Kern based on the directions from your board. Though your board tasked me to be the SNF czar, as it's been called, I did not have the skill set to do what Mr. Levitt and what Public Health did. So my focus has been to look at some of the industry trends and to understand if there were other things that the county might be able to do to assist improvement ongoing in the skilled nursing facilities within Kern County. Because we don't have the regulatory authority, some of the recommendations, as Ms. Kerrigan identified, that were presented to your board previously, we cannot do. We do have, however, one incredibly valuable asset in Kern County, and that is the Ombudsman Program. So the mission of the Ombudsman Program is to provide direct advocacy on behalf of residents in nursing homes, assisted living facilities, day programs, congregate living, and intermediate care facilities. Unfortunately, the funding for this program is customarily not adequate for the mission requirements. In 2010, state funding for the program was dramatically reduced. Last year, the state restored funding to the previous level, which has allowed the Ombudsman Program to restore staffing, which now stands at the Ombudsman position, 1 intake coordinator, 1 case manager, and 1 part-time volunteer coordinator. Our Ombudsman reports the Kern program receives an extraordinarily high monthly caseload compared to other counties. The program is tasked to provide assistance as needed for approximately 4,000 constituents in nearly 150 facilities and programs for a wide range of issues, including illegal discharge, facility care issues, care plans, health care directives, plus a myriad of others. I'm going to skip the part in my presentation where we went over the recommendations provided before that we cannot do, and go right to the part where we are talking about the things that we would like to recommend to your board for consideration now. In developing these, I have met with the department heads and staff for various departments, and am happy to advise that some of the recommendations that we were going to present, those departments have proactively started, one of which was leveraging county resources to assist the Ombudsman Program to build community awareness for the 5-star rating program, and thank you to Public Health for jumping into that immediately. During discussions with the Ombudsman Program, she had mentioned something that would be extremely helpful to her, and a capability that the program does not have, which is GIS mapping. And to have a GIS map of the skilled nursing facilities and the other programs would be beneficial to her. I am pleased to advise that Public Health GIS department has already created this map. It was done on the fly during the French fire. There will be discussions with the Ombudsman for the process to keep that updated and to make it available to her, but to understand that this map is also critically important to county response. Another resource that Public Health has offered is to respond to the request from the Ombudsman to have access to a public health nurse for questions. Should the Ombudsman be confused by conflicting or contradictory medical directives as they are working with a constituent, to be able to go to a nurse to ask for clarification. And thank you, Ms. Kerrigan, for approving that proactively. The other things that we would like to bring to your board's attention for your consideration is, first, whether or not your board would be willing to issue a statement of support to acknowledge the unique benefits of the Ombudsman Program, which could be submitted through channels to encourage the state to reconsider the current funding levels. If that is something that your board would be interested in doing, I'd be happy to work with council or other more experienced staff to develop the kind of statement that would be appropriate for this. We do believe that increased funding for the program is critically important. Given the number of programs, the number of constituents, the size of Kern County, the Ombudsman Program is running at maximum capacity all the time. Also, in discussion with your county departments, we propose establishing a more formalized work group to build the Ombudsman access to and collaboration with county departments with relevant mission response. While some interaction has long existed, this would provide, we see value to providing this group that would include aging and adult, public health, and the Kern District Attorney's Office. As we have found during the course of working with the Ombudsman Program, as she has been unable to satisfactorily address issues with local state representatives, Making those county departments aware of those issues has allowed those county executives to push the issue up the chain of command to the state and to make it clear to the state that in Kern County there are eyes on and that we will not hesitate to make noise, to get resolution, to assist our residents, so to hold the facilities accountable to meet standards. Your board should also be advised that during the French fire, the Ombudsman Program provided invaluable assistance to the county as we responded to that event. There were 2 facilities under areas that required evacuation or potential evacuation. She provided expertise, technical assistance, outreach to the families of the residents, and gave us the guidance that otherwise we would not have had, and I assume, Ms. Kerrigan, you would concur with that. We would ask that your board allow continuing to leverage existing county capabilities. One of the goals for the Ombudsman Program is to have a better functioning website with the links to the forms and the other information that our constituents might need. They do not have IT expertise within the Ombudsman Program. Their website was developed on a one-time grant, and ongoing maintenance to that is beyond their capability and beyond their funding capability as well, given the tight funds. Should funding from a grant source or any other source become available to allow the Ombudsman Program to expand their staffing for 2 more case managers, one of the issues discussed with the Ombudsman was the large size of Kern County. And if the county would be willing to provide for this staff, should they come on board, unused office space in the area of Ridgecrest and Delano. This would eliminate the time requirements for Ombudsman staff to be traveling back and forth. They could have more time to focus on taking care of constituents without, by remaining local in those areas. In discussion with the Ombudsman, she has identified 3 goals that she would like me to share with your board, assuming that we can move forward with some of these proposals. 1 is building a more robust volunteer base, as the Ombudsman Program is heavily reliant on volunteers. The Ombudsman would like to see the establishment and provide ongoing support of family councils at some of these facilities. Currently in Kern County, there are no family councils. It takes 2 families to start one at a facility, and those councils have the legal standing to negotiate directly with the facility on issues of concern. And if desired by your board, the Ombudsman has offered to provide an annual State of the Facilities report for your review to ensure that your board members remain informed of ongoing issues and concern. I asked the Ombudsman, Ms. Devora Gonzalez, to be here today, for those of you who have not met her, and she's right here. So I'd like to introduce her to your board so you could have eyes on who we're talking about. And even though she doesn't see this, everyone I've talked to about Devora Gonzalez, the same word comes out: superstar, superstar. We are lucky to have the superstar who passionately, compassionately operates to assist our facilities. Devora Gonzalez.
Welcome.
Thank
Good morning.
you so very much. It's a pleasure to be here. But good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. I'm a little nervous. I've never been here before, but the dog in the beginning, that was really nice. So I am really proud to serve older adults. Older adults in our community are so vulnerable, but I've been doing it since 2010. And, okay. The funding that you guys have provided to serve older adults have really saved lives. It really has. Like Jared was saying, it's also improved quality of care. There's a lot of residents that would have needed a higher level of care if that infection prevention mission that you guys had wasn't there. So it really did save lives. I had a lot of family members contact us and ask us, like, who are these people that are coming in and doing these things? I said, well, you know, the Board of Supervisors appointed them and funded them, and all of these efforts have definitely improved. I also want to say that we are the only one here in Kern County that I know of all of the Ombudsman programs that had this support for residents in nursing homes. So I really, really want to thank you. And I also want to thank Bryn and Georgiana and Jared for all of their wonderful efforts. They say I'm a superstar. I think they're the superstars. If I can clone them, I would, but I can't. So I'm thrilled to continue partnering with them. I don't know if you guys have any specific questions for me. I'm open to answering any of those.
Thank you. I'll ask if any members of the board have any specific questions now, or we'll return to the board for comments. Thank you. We may have a question for you, but you can go ahead and have a seat.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, so I don't think we have any other public speakers on this item. Is that right, Ms. Kerrigan? So I'll go ahead and return to the board. Supervisor Maggard is punched in. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to take just a few minutes to talk about this when long after there will be anybody here who will remember me. I will remember some very specific people. Mr. Levitt, Ms. Armstrong, Mr. Constantine, Ms. Kerrigan, and a few others about this specific item. I've already spoken trying to affirm those who were fundamental in other parts of it, but I want to talk about this part for a moment. Of all, when the page turns on COVID someday and it's over, it's managed and we can not fret about it like we do now, I will be the most proud of this effort. We saved, if not many, many dozens of lives, hundreds of lives by our efforts in this area. Had the nation followed the same protocols that we put in place in Kern County, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of lives would have been saved. And that's because some specific people did some specific things. I want to thank several of them. As I mentioned a moment ago about the Kern Recovers program, the county immediately jumped in. And I want to just paint a little bit of a picture for you, because it's easy to forget what it was like. These were completely uncertain times, frankly. They are still uncertain times. It fries me a little bit that we have national leaders and state leaders and sometimes local leaders who act like they have all the answers. Nobody knows the answers to this. This is evolving faster than we can manage, but I'm so proud of the way that we have engaged to continue. I remember a moment when Mr. Constantine was on a conference call with the state. It was late on a Saturday afternoon. I was on my bike, and I happened to be downtown and making my way through downtown, going back home. The sun was about to go down, and Matt and myself and Zach Scribner got on a phone call. I'm sitting under a tree on the curb, sweating, from my bike ride, and we are having a conversation about these revelations that we just heard from the state. In moments, we came up with a plan about how to initiate the process that led to this. Zach and Matt jumped immediately into it. I'll mention Matt several times, Bryn as well. As Matt's role changed, Bryn's role increased, and she's just been fabulous. I want to single out, though, two other people besides those that I've already mentioned. One is Mr. Levitt. Mr. Levitt, I have great respect for you. It was a time when we did not know why people were dying by the scores in these convalescent home, in these skilled nursing facilities. It was almost like a horror movie, because you didn't know why these people, day after day, more and more people were dying. Their family members were terrified. It was, bottom line is, Mr. Levitt put on his safety equipment and walked into a place that had, it presented an uncertain risk to his life. And he did it time and time and time again, and was tenacious in the way professional, but tenacious in the way you entered in there. So Mr. Levitt, I will never forget what you did in that regard. So I'm thankful for that. I want to talk about Georgiana Armstrong for a moment. I don't know what you know about bulldogs, but there's a reason a bulldog is called a bulldog, because this little 40-pound dog jumps up and grabs a hold of the nose and the lips of a 2,000-pound bull and gets its attention and makes it succumb to its influence. A little tiny dog makes a big giant bull go to the ground if necessary, if it doesn't listen. I mean this completely affectionate and respectfully. Georgiana Armstrong is a bulldog. She grabbed a hold of this. She jumped in with both feet, was completely immersed. All her passion was unleashed on this, and she made the state listen to us. She made the convalescent homes, the skilled nursing facilities listen to us. It was a joy to watch her engage, and I will always be grateful, Georgiana, for your willingness to do that. And because of this board executing the funding and being supportive, because of the county responding, my colleague, Mr. Scrivener, Mr. Constantine, Ms. Kerrigan, Jared, and Georgiana, you guys saved scores and scores of lives. And I would love for us to forward your concerns, Ms. Armstrong, to the state. If anything like this happens again, this can be a template for how others can save hundreds of thousands of lives nationally. I received desperate phone calls from family members who, remember, this was a time you couldn't go into the convalescent home, into the skilled nursing facility. You were barred from going in. They were terrified about what was happening to their parents in these places. And I just cannot overstate the life-changing, life-saving response that you guys put together for this. So I will always be grateful for that. I'm very, very proud of you. And I would love to support this report going forward, Georgiana. So you put that together, and we'll certainly consider it.
Okay. Well, once again, Supervisor Maggard, thank you for your leadership on this. You made a huge difference in making sure that we engaged in this, which was, as you know, we've stated, outside of the county's purview per se, because these are state-regulated facilities. But I think that our attention was extremely important and has reaped huge benefits for the community. So thank you to everybody. So the requested action here is to receive and file on this. There are some recommendations that Ms. Armstrong has laid out for us, items 1 through 5. I'm supportive of these requests. I'll ask if, I guess I'll ask any member of the board to include these in their motion to receive and file.
Motion to receive and file and to recommend the drafting of the correspondence that lists these suggestions as specified by Ms. Armstrong.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Madam Clerk just wanted to clarify with me that we did ask for public comment. I think we have, but I'll give one more opportunity for any member of the public to make comments on this before we vote on the motion. Okay, seeing none, you have a motion and a second. Please cast your votes.
Thank you. The motion is approved. All ayes.
Thank you. Terrific work for everyone involved. Okay, so that brings us to the end of our morning's agenda. We do have items to consider in closed session. Under the County Administrative Office, we have items 45 and 46. Also, we're going, I'm going to say that right now. Okay, thanks. Yeah, and we're going to have a supplement to the agenda, item 46A as well. And we also have 2 items under County Council, items 47 and 48. So a total of 5 items. 3 now with the supplemental under County Administrative Office, and the 2 under County Council. So I'll entertain a motion to adjourn to closed session.
Motion to adjourn.
Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you.